no borrower will be able to service the debts at that level. And the only way that it will be possible, whether it's for governments or for private borrowers, is to borrow more money. So it will become a vicious circle.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our monthly interview. Egon, the things are starting to get really serious. Anyone who doesn't prepare now is in for a rude awakening, at least that's what I think. Great to have you back as always.
Yes, hello Jan, good to see you. Yes, of course it is. And you know, I've been planning for this personally and from the business point of view and our clients for probably for 35 years, although, you know, as you know, we decided that gold would be the best protection against the times that were coming. So we started with that over 25 years ago. And of course, we've seen a rise of around 15 times, depending on the currencies. And that's sadly just the beginning, because the governments now are going to do everything they can to destroy the value of paper money, as always happens at the end of an era. And that's what we're going to go through now. And as you rightly say, it's getting closer. You know, these things often take longer than we expect, and they have done. But nevertheless, the risk is there. It's always been there. It's higher than ever now. And I think we are going to. The stock market needs to crash or come down severely before people start understanding what's going to happen. And I think this coming autumn, we will see the stock market declining, but that's going to be a long decline. It could be a decade long or so, and it could start with a crash, or it could start slowly. And nevertheless, the risk is there now, and this is the time to protect yourself.
Exactly. We come to the stock market in a few moments. But Egon, let me start with a joke. Although I'm not really sure if this is a joke, at least Rand Paul published this statement on X. It seems he visited Fort Knox and he writes, yes, the gold is there, all approximately 147 million ounces. It is impressive, but the real point is what it still teaches in 2026. My question, Egon, was he joking? How could he know that the gold is there? Besant before him claimed the same, the gold is there, don't worry, no audit. What's the intent behind such a statement? Is he going to ruin his reputation? I really don't get it.
Well, I'm surprised myself, I must say. You know, his father has been a real rock when it comes to fighting against the establishment and against fiat money and against the mismanagement of the US economy. And now the son is actually telling us that the gold is there. Someone must have bribed him, or someone must have convinced him that, you know, if he does that, he does a service for the US. Maybe he gets some benefit from it. Everybody in government or Senate or Congress is not, if not bribable, but possible to bend a bit. So it's very sad. Every president, or virtually every president, when he starts his reign, says he's going to go and check the gold in Fort Knox. And they go there and have a quick look for 5 minutes, and they say, well, the gold is there. And they have no idea how much gold is there, and if it's real gold or tungsten, which is fake gold. You know, we both doubt that the US has got its 8 tons of gold in the vaults. I think most of it has been leased to the market and to keep prices low. But that will come out one day. You know, Trump did the same. Went to Fort Knox also, first time, I think, his first round, and same conclusion: the gold is there. You don't expect anything else from government or or officials. So the gold isn't there, in my view. It's been disappearing gradually over the years by basically the central banks lending to the market. Then the gold that they lend through bullion banks in New York or London goes to, that's 400 ounce bars, goes to Switzerland to be broken down into kilo bars, because that's what the bullion banks do. and then they sell them where the demand is, which is mainly in the Far East. It's China, of course, primarily, India also. And they all want kilobars. And we have the statistics, how the gold is going from, for example, the US to Switzerland, and then on to the Far East, China and India, etc. I would expect that the gold is not there to the extent of 8,000 tons, and probably a lot less. We will see one day, but not yet. There hasn't been an audit, as we know, since Eisenhower's days. A physical audit has not taken place of all of the gold holdings since Eisenhower's days in the mid-1950s.
That's true, Egon, and to hold gold will be a key. The main topic today is you, major investors, will not be able to secure your profits. And that was an interesting statement from a very powerful investor, and this is the Norwegian State Fund. Let me read what he commented to the market. That was really a shocker. The world's largest sovereign wealth fund, Norway's 2.3 trillion oil fund, reported last week a record 184.3 billion profit in the first half of 2026, anchored by technology stocks at the heart of the AI boom. CEO Nicolai Tangen celebrated by warning the public that the fund could be one day be worth nothing, invoking nuclear war, biological weapons attacks, and a catastrophic stock market collapse. That will help with the stereotypes of Scandinavians as cold and gloomy. Even if we don't assume the worst case, nuclear or biological war, we still have the real danger of a stock market crash, and we discussed about that several times. There are really good chances it would be the worst crash of all times because the imbalances are so big. It will wipe out such big funds completely or nearly completely. So they must understand, or people with real money must understand, they will simply not keep their paper wealth. It's such a danger. I think most investors are not even aware of this risk now.
Well, yeah, let me comment on that. First of all, he's partly doing that to protect himself. He's probably got a massive bonus now for the previous year, or he's getting one. Obviously, we all know that at some point markets will crash, and therefore he now can say afterwards when it happens, well, I told you so. I was expecting that. The question is, so if he was expecting that, it might not be as bad as he says there, or it might be. The risk is very high that it will be. Then the question is, what measures has he taken in order to protect the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund? Because it's no use just making the statement and taking no action. Of course, if you believe that that's a possibility, he should not have US tech shares where he's made a fortune. He should not have major in the stock market. He should not be big in the bond market. He should obviously own a lot of gold. And they could easily become the biggest gold buyer in the world, and own, put half of the fund in gold. That would be sensational, but that would be prudent. But you see, Norway sold all their gold, all their government-owned gold, for I think it was longer, 30, 40 years ago, I think it was. Or it was certainly in the 90s, I think the latest bit that they sold. So they have no gold. And now he's talking about the whole of the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund possibly collapsing. So why isn't he taking measures? And that's typical. He's crying wolf, but he's not taking any action to protect himself. Of course, he's an employee. He has got no skin in the game. He gets a massive bonus this year. And so he'll be happy. And I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't buy gold himself. And he would be stupid if he didn't. But maybe he is stupid. I don't think he can be that stupid since he's clearly made a lot of money, and especially on US tech stocks. So it's an interesting situation. He sees it coming, but he does nothing about it to protect the Norwegian people. Very sad. Very, very sad. And that's typical for the whole of the world. People in leading positions, they don't understand the risk, and they don't understand how to protect themselves. And it is so simple. especially with the debt situation we have now, that we know that the fiat money is going to go to zero before this era is over, and that's going to be in the next few years. And gold is just the simplest way of protecting that risk. But very few people do it, and certainly very few sovereign wealth funds do it.
Egon, that's true. And I think he cannot communicate this to the market, because what would happen then? There would be a panic to buy gold. And they simply want to protect the fiat money system as long as possible. So they cannot give such a public statement to enter the gold market big time. But let's come to the next topic. And those are possible triggers for the crash. We discussed about the bond market several times back and forth, Egon, and now I think we have crossed the Rubicon really. On a global scale, the yields are rising, and sooner or later, the stock markets follow, but on the opposite direction. The Bloomberg Global Bond Index yield has surged to around 4.2%, its highest level since July 2008. By the way, we remember 2008. Long-term government borrowing costs are now back at levels last seen during the global financial crisis. Exactly. And why is this happening? Here's the chart, by the way. And why is this happening? Because the debt is out of control. Here the US example, in July alone, 432 billion more debt. Here on this side you find more interesting graphics. Also the Corona anomaly, but it's really moving up fast. And all investors holding those bonds, Egon, of course, they suffer big losses, and more bonds are coming onto the market. A sell-off, I think a sell-off in the bond market would bring the yields to skyrocket. This is very likely in my view. And on the opposite, what should happen with the broad stock market then? And anyone who hasn't realized this danger yet, that he urgently needs gold, is beyond help. That's my opinion.
Yes, of course, we know that deficits in the US are currently increasing by $2 trillion a year. And that's going to accelerate. It will accelerate with higher inflation. It will accelerate with much higher interest rates. I said already in 21, interest rates have now turned up in the US, which means also up in the world, together with inflation. And that will create massive problems for the US government to finance the escalating debt. And we're talking about here, I think, remember that we haven't seen the crisis start yet. When the crisis starts, you will have, just take the financial markets, you will have problems in the banking system that will be massive. And there'll be an aid necessary to major parts of the banking system for it not to collapse. And the US debt of 40 trillion will, and the interest cost on that, which is today about $1 trillion a year, will increase dramatically. Because I think interest rates will go up to, like I saw them in the 1970s, they will go up to high teens at least, maybe 20%, maybe even higher. And no borrower will be able to service the debts at that level. And the only way that will be possible, whether it's for governments or for private borrowers, is to borrow more money. So it will become a vicious circle, a spiral of higher debts, higher interest costs, higher deficits. And that's what always happens at the end of a monetary era. And it will be disastrous for the world, of course. And the consequences will be a collapsing stock market, a collapsing bond market, and an extremely depressed economy, potentially, obviously, recession, potentially depression also. And that will lead to social unrest and real problems, and governments will come and go like they are doing already. Leaders will come and go. I forecast that a long time ago, and we're seeing it in most countries. And either we know that the leaders are on the way out, some are out already, some are on their way. it will be a very difficult, both economic situation in many countries, in most countries, and a difficult social situation. Add to that two wars which are merging into one now in Ukraine and in the Middle East. Wars are always part of the end of an era also. Governments start wars in order to be able to raise more money and blame the war. And so those wars can escalate. And we're in for a very, very difficult times in the world. So protection is, of course, everything here to the extent that people can. And of course, as we have said many times, we're saying again today, hold some physical gold, hold it outside the banking system. It's not going to protect you from all the problems we've outlined, but it certainly is good to have some reserves.
Egon, I agree, but governments also do sometimes something really dangerous and crazy if they are played into the corner. You mentioned the wars, and I found there some statistics from China that point into this direction. Remember Germany in the 30s, the USA, the New Deal. What brought them out of the depression? War spending. And I see something similar looming in China now because private individuals and companies are paying down debt. And this is really dangerous in a fiat-based monetary system, wherever in the world. China's net new loans dropped by $50.4 billion, equivalent in yuan, in July, marking only the third monthly decline this century. We see here is a little red point here and here. Loans extended specifically to the real economy posted an even sharper drop, with net repayments of 87.5 billion, the largest monthly decline in data going back to 2002. As I mentioned, Egon, if this happens, a very dangerous situation. It can spread to other countries and somebody has to take the loans. So the best case, in my opinion, would be similar as Japan did it. Big government spending for infrastructure, otherwise war. I see those real dangers. The war is the big danger here. What's your opinion?
Yes, of course, we will get to a point when the economy will inflate or implode. And I think that's early today, but the Chinese are a thrifty people. And when they see times being a bit hard, they have a massive savings ratio. So it's easy for them to repay a bit of loans when they feel that they should be prudent. And of course, but the government's got to keep the economy running. So they are, as you said, they will still spend money. China has a debt problem also, but the difference between all other countries is that they're not dependent on outside money to the same extent as the Western world is. So therefore, they will solve these problems internally. So therefore, although they will suffer like everybody else in coming years, they will manage it and come out better and stronger than the West. And after this crisis has ended, China will definitely be the leading economy in the world. And the US will have had real problems and their economy will never be the same again because it was dependent on a dollar debt system that was unsustainable. Therefore, it's so clear that the West is going down and the sun is rising in the East. Everybody can see it. And of course, the East or the China are not short-term planners either. They plan for 100 years. The US plans for the next 10 minutes, sometimes for the next hour, or maybe sometimes for a few weeks or a month. And as we know, the president changes his mind 100 times a day. Therefore, it's very easy for China with the long-term vision to overtake the US and be what they deserve to be at this point, the number one economy in the world. And it's impressive what they achieve in all areas of especially industry, of course. And Then you take their AI, it costs an absolute fraction of the US AI. And the valuation of the US AI stocks, are well, they're ridiculous, of course, because they are based on no profit and massive debt, whilst China can produce the same thing for a fraction of what the US spends. So we'll see the whole of the AI sector collapse in the US. I'm talking about the stocks. Of course, AI, just like the internet in the 2000s, will continue to thrive and be a dominant industry. But the financing of it and the valuation of it will come down dramatically, and a lot of companies will go under in that phase. And China will take an even bigger part of that market because they are superior in that area also. So it's a fascinating world. That you will see more of it in the coming decades than I will, but I've certainly seen a very interesting beginning of it, and it's been great fun to observe.
Absolutely, Egon. I'm sure you had really interesting times. And China, you said it, they have the manufacturing and they sell, in fact, their goods for gold, not literally, but they exchange quickly their US bonds into gold. So they are really wise and long-term planning. Nevertheless, I don't like how they deal with personal freedom. So that's my problem with China. Thank you for today, Egon. I didn't mention the JP Morgan warning of a global famine. We have many dangers around, and the stock market is only one problem. The financial wealth to secure it is important, but it's not all, of course. You said it, and I say it. Prepare for many different cases, not only financially. Buy the stuff you consider important. The time may run out to get this. Thank you for today, Egon. Till next month. Auf Wiederluke.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you.